Different jumpers.
Hello,
Bored of this jumper.
hello. Good morning.
Morning, everyone.
It's a miracle I'm here, really, after my weekend.
Why?
Well, when you think I'm 60 next year and I behaved like a 16-year-old all weekend.
You went out, you had a few drinks and had a dance. That's not behaving like a 16-year-old.
No, but then I went out on night 2, which I'm going to make a reel of tonight.
Yeah, that's quite normal.
2 different hotels. Yeah, I suppose so. One should push oneself. Jane Moore goes to everything. She goes out all the time, but I don't go out that much.
Well, it was quite a sedate weekend myself. But obviously exhausting to you, you old fogey.
Follow us on your Instagram, @CoffeeMoaning. I'm going to be doing lives there in the morning before this. Made a bit of a balls up of it this morning, but there you go. I've uploaded it. Chin chin. Chin chin.
So, so everyone had a healthy dosage across the channel of Lee, didn't you? You had him for the curly cooks.
Oh my God.
All I'm going to say, from a directorial perspective, is thank Christ he was there.
Curly Cooks was Dina and I worked so hard before we shot it that we were totally exhausted by the time we got it, so it just went totally
tits up. It took a lot of preparation. They were really preparing it for most people.
Because we did 10 different dishes.
Yeah, it was huge.
It's a lot.
And then, of course, you had him in the No Name Sunday show for those members. For those of you who are members, he was there too.
And then we had him all over my Instagram.
And then you had him, sashaying.
Shared a bed with him.
Sashaying.
Well, shared a room with him. But listen, how are you guys? How was your weekend? Good morning. Who was that? Happy belated birthday. Who was that to? Good morning, Martin.
Happy belated Mother's Day, Marjorie Dudon. Is it Mother's Day in
France? Are you French? Dudon?
Well, I think it's Mother's Day is it Mother's Day in France or America?
I don't know.
Not too sure. Morning, Faith. How are you? Raspberry Mojito Girl. Grania Scarlet. International Anne-Marie Loafer. International Mother's Day in the US, yes. Oh,
Happy Mother's Day for any of our viewers that are in the part of the world where it's Mother's Day.
Laura Lou, I want to vouch on episode 13, Curly Cuts, lovely Michelle email, but I hope about anything since do I need to do anything else? Yeah, Laura, we've been waiting for you to get in touch for yonks. So
yes,
please, we announced this so long ago. Can you send your email through to can you send your email through to Michelle? And we will get that to you ASAP. We did announce it on about
We announced it everywhere. We were
lives.
searching for you, you'll get it. That's good. We can send it
if you send the email, send it again.
Yeah.
Anyway, I hope everyone's... It's Mental Health Awareness Week. If I'm honest, I feel a bit jittery today. I feel a bit kind of... and I don't know why. And I don't know if that's because it's Mental Health Awareness Week or what. What do you think that is?
There might be people here that don't know we have stuff going on.
I doubt it.
Somebody new with us today.
No, absolutely.
Go on.
What?
I don't want to talk for you.
I'll talk for you.
The relevance of mental health awareness.
Well, no, mental health awareness week is relevant to everyone because it's mental health.
Yeah, but also when you have spoken a lot about your mental health, like you have with your bipolar and ADHD and depression and this stuff, there is an expectation with a week like this for you to talk about that. Me with my ADHD, it's like. And with that is a huge responsibility because I think it's always incredibly brave when somebody talks about their mental health, as you have done. And one is also whenever anyone does, is like, could possibly be shot at for that. Sod it, we don't care. There's loads of programming this week, isn't there, which we're going to be watching and reviewing.
There's certainly the Matt Willis, yeah, absolutely.
So, so there's a lot going on. And though I know you struggle sometimes with mental health awareness days or weeks, I don't. I think that you struggle in that you worry that people sort of tick a box and they've done it and then that's everybody moves on. But I just think the constant trickling through to people of actually, the challenges.
No, quite the opposite.
Really however that's done.
My thinking on it is it shouldn't be a week. It should be, the idea that you sort of home in on it for a week, I worry that sometimes that means that people go, dealt with, and for actually a lot of people who are struggling with their mental health, it's like it's a permissible moment to talk about it, but don't go on about it, all right? Let's not go on about it beyond that week. And that's not strictly the case. I think there's a huge number of people out there who feel that perhaps mental health is talked about a little bit too much now, but We would never, as you always say, we would never say that about physical health. We would never suggest to anyone with diabetes or struggling with diabetes that we banged on about diabetes too much. So why would we or should we read mental health? And I also think that the conditions in which most people live, the pressures, the stresses, the social media, the distractions, all that kind of stuff, create constantly new, novel mental health assaults on a daily, minute by minute basis. Yeah. I think, Lee Dorrant, you say you feel anxious too. Zoe is also going to be posting. Yeah, do check out Zoe on Instagram.
And Zoe's saying it still feels like a stigma. Because I think it's only the beginning of the awakening of it. It's like we've been talking about our physical health for decades and decades and decades. But when I just think about just our experiences in the last few years and how utterly ignorant I was to everything until I met Mark, I think we're only at the beginning of it. So there's still so much to learn. And we've come out of a pandemic. We've come out of a global crisis. At this point, I think there's probably more mental health suffering at this point across the world than there probably ever has been, possibly.
Absolutely. And I mean, I personally think that there's an extraordinary amount of gaslighting going on by society, which is like, we had this enormous crisis called COVID. And there's this kind of rush to pretend it didn't happen, and people get confused. They go, "Oh yeah, well clearly maybe it wasn't as serious as we." That's not the point. The behaviour and the response to it was serious and had huge ramifications and implications for everyone. And I think sometimes there's a case of people just going, "Come on now, let's just move on and let's get on." And the human mind can't work like that. And as soon as you force the human mind to try and work like that, it goes into a tailspin and it starts to fall apart. I think the stigma is still there. I think there's a stigma to the stigma. You know what I mean? One of the things I find really difficult about mental health at this point in a week is sometimes having anything new to say about it. And often I think, one of the things that's really important, more than having anything new to say about it, is that the older I get, and say the more, for anyone who doesn't know, I'm also 18, nearly 19 years sober, sometimes the strategies and the advice and the care, it becomes simpler and simpler as I get older and more complicated. I think because we often think it's a mental health issue. If you've got a mental health crisis, it's got to be somehow kind of complicated and sort of hard to fathom, and it's sort of, it really isn't. I mean, sometimes some of the simplest solutions or some of the solutions are the simplest solutions, about physicality, about distraction, about self-care and all that kind of stuff. Whether I can apply it to myself, that's the problem. And I think perhaps what's important about Mental Health Awareness Week is less learning something new, because I think anyone who takes mental health seriously isn't going to be convinced of anything new that week. And anyone who has a sort of arched eyebrow and is po-faced about mental health aren't going to have their opinions changed by Mental Health Awareness Week. But what I do think is important is to constantly encourage an opening up and sharing and discussion. And I'm of the opinion that that's where social media it can be really crucially important and good in terms of allowing you to connect with people that you would never have ever had a chance to hear from, see, witness, talk to, encounter. And if they open up about something that makes ordinary or relatable something that you feel is extraordinary or despairing in your life, you go, oh, they've said something that resonates for me, that resonates for me. We never had that way back in the day. So on the one hand, often I think social media and tech and everything is a huge driver of all sorts of crises and problems, but it's the new reality, isn't it? So I do think, something that is positive to come out of Mental Health Awareness Week is in a sense hijacking social media and using it as an act of sharing. Because for me, the most important part, and then I'll shut up, of addiction, and if I'm honest, addiction for me, the reason I start with addiction is addiction was a consequence of me trying to deal with mental health issues. So underlying the addiction, I was trying to numb mental health conditions and issues and stresses and traumas and all that kind of malarkey. But at the base of all of that, the thing that kind of helps the most is sharing, is hearing stuff reflected back to you. Not even necessarily the same stuff, but in hearing someone's different story, hearing a parallel, realizing you're not on your own, even if you are on your own, literally. And I think I really do have to. I want to give a shout out really to social media. I think this is when social media is really good. if I'm honest. It can be really good. It can also be really horrible because there's lots of nasty cocks out there who use it for horrible
it's the
things.
law of two with everything, isn't it?
Exactly.
And I do think there is more of a leaning to knocking social media and around mental health. But I'm not one of those people because I've actually learned a lot. And I think, why not learn more about their brain? Somebody just said there, I don't think anyone has perfect mental health. And I said, and I agree, like nobody has perfect physical health.
No.
We're always having to adjust and think about, do we need to lose weight? Do we need statins? Do we need to, is our blood pressure high? We're constantly, and as we get older, that increases. It's like, what do we need to keep this balance of health in our body? And I really, really believe it's the same with our brain. It's the same, our brain. We don't even talk about it. There's this brilliant psychiatrist talking about this the other day. He said it's the most incredible piece of kit with so much fine-tuning going on, and yet people are already bored about hearing about what's going on for so many people within their brain and within their soul and within their heart. So we'll always bring it up. We would never bore on about it, but we always think that there is a place to have further discussion about it, like we do with our physical health, our relationships. We are 360-degree humans. We need to always be thinking about our relationships with people, with society, with our children, with our bodies, with our mind, why do we have to constantly take bits out and go, well, that's too much now, we've heard too much? For anyone that it's too much, just don't listen, just turn away.
But it's incredibly complicated because on the one hand, it's the devil, it's a kind of Faustian pact though, isn't it, the whole social media thing? I think the reason people get quite quickly intolerant of discussion about these things is precisely, actually, unfortunately, also a consequence of this swipe right, social media can have what you want, dopamine hit, I mean, in a weird way, talking about mental health and then focusing on a particular area of mental health for a bit almost delivers a bit of a dopamine hit in and of itself socially. And so we all go racing down that rabbit hole, and then we all come rushing out, and then we all go racing for the next one. I mean, someone just said here, May Edmondson, I feel like it's accepted to share more common health conditions like anxiety and depression, but other conditions like psychosis and eating disorders are still so misunderstood. Absolutely. The sexy mental health
and bipolar,
topics.
because it's like people have got so much prejudice. Well, so much misinformation. I did. Until we came up against bipolar, what did I know about bipolar? Just grab something. Or they go mad and then they go down and then they can buy whole shops up. Just the surface, of course, because if you're not in it and around it, you don't really think about it. Psychosis, where do people go with psychosis? Psychosis is such a broad thing, but people will go to, a psychotic, like somebody in a frantic psychotic episode and then judge all psychosis in that way. Schizophrenia presents itself in so many different ways,
And I think it's really interesting what we're saying, because in a sense, there is a hierarchy of sexy mental health disorders.
Acceptable.
Acceptable.
Not scary, non-scary.
But trendy, trending, cool. Not cool, I don't mean cool as in cool to have, but it's okay to talk about certain. I mean, we were talking
because I think some of them are scary. So I remember years ago, one of our daughters coming home. She was young. She said, "Oh, my friend so and so's got schizophrenia," and I remember going, "Well, she can't have schizophrenia." And I thought, why am I saying that? I don't even. I've just got one idea of what schizophrenia is. Well, of course, anybody at any age can have schizophrenia. And when I think back to my ignorance. I'm so glad of all the awareness I've got and how much I've learned and how much more there is to learn. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I think we're going to carry on.
Yeah.
I
was, but I forgot what I was going to say.
Oh, right. Yeah, I mean, we were kind of talking briefly also this morning about how it's funny how certain types of, we'll get into some of the news stories in the title in a minute, but it's funny how certain things become characterised as not quite so severe. We were talking for whatever reasons about HRT, and menopausal stuff this morning, and it's funny, isn't it, how certain things become almost characterised. That's a lifestyle problem. It's not. It's actually a profound mental health crisis
for some.
Menopause,
not everyone.
the menopause and its negative implications and negative impacts can be disastrous. And and yet it's kind of, let's make it a features piece in Heat magazine.
We're already being told that we've gone on about it too much, and that we're stealing funds from the NHS. Women wanting HRT. I mean, what the fuck?
Yeah, leader and everyone.
Why don't you walk in somebody's shoes first before you say there's no money for that particular thing?
Yeah. Anyway, so I do think if there's one thing that Mental Health Awareness Week could be good about, it could be it needs to, in a sense, perhaps, focus on the common issues, but also focus on those that aren't as kind of, I hate to use the word, but aren't as sexy, but are quite challenging. I think things like psychosis are quite challenging. I'm forever drawn to the idea that, a bit more study needs to be done about narcissists, because we all have to fucking live with some of them, and it'd be quite nice to know how.
Hang on, you don't live with any of them.
No, not literally. I don't mean literally, but I mean in society.
Yeah.
I mean, whenever that topic comes up, a lot of you talk about how difficult that is, and it would be, again, it's like all these things. Rather than just saying, "Oh, it's awful," it'd be nice to kind of better understand it, and so work it out.
I think maybe in Mental Health Awareness Week, maybe people should do things like, what can you do to be proactive? Maybe look up something, a particular mental health condition that you just know maybe 3 words about, and just look it up, and just because it's so interesting. Or if you know somebody's has got a mental health condition and they've shared that with you, maybe this week, actually, I remember when you told me that, but I didn't really ask the second and third question. What actually is it like for you? Because, and very gently, because they might not want to talk about it. And if you did ever want to talk about it, I'd be up for listening. That sort of a thing, I think, is proactive awareness.
For example, schizophrenia, just briefly. I mean, is there a sliding scale of schizophrenia? I'd like to know that. Can you be slightly schizophrenic? Or do we have this... Or do we have this characterization of it that it has to be someone who's
very scary,
in an incredibly life-threatening to themselves and others sort of state?
I think a lot of people still think about that about schizophrenia and those sorts of things, don't they? Because they just because what will tend to get into the news is something very scary.
Yeah.
But there's an awful lot of people living a totally, eventful life with these conditions.
Or you hear a condition like that, or you hear the word. Someone just said psychosis.
Psychosis.
A lot of people. Yeah, a lot of people on bipolar meds. you're taking what are called antipsychotic drugs, and that makes you kind of go.
Even when you said that to me, I went, "What?"
God,
and I thought, "Why am I saying what?" It's because I've got this fixed idea of what psychosis is. So yeah. So tonight is the documentary with Matt Willis, isn't it?
No, I think that's in 2 nights.
Oh, that's 2 nights.
I think it's on Thursday.
Tonight there's a documentary on ADHD, which we will be watching.
Yeah.
And giving our thoughts on.
Psych, the Greek word for soul. Is it?
Oh, interesting.
Christos says, if only everyone reached down in their souls and try at least to understand what people with mental health are going through. Absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely. I think it's just be less judgy. Be less judgy.
Be more open.
Be more open. Just a brief topic, just because this seems to be sort of popping up everywhere for very sad reasons. S Club 7 has rebranded itself as a 5-piece band following the death of Paul.
They literally have to change the number.
And it's not S Club 6, because also another member of the band isn't going to be performing with them. Hannah Spirit has announced she won't join the team, the band. So they're just going to be called S Club. But yeah, it's that tragic sort of.
He's only 46. Do we know how he died? No.
Isn't there suspicion that it was
I don't know.
suicide? I'm not entirely sure. Not entirely sure.
No, I don't think I've read anything about that.
No. He was just found dead at 46. So again, that's obviously all over the headlines at the moment, is that they're rebranding as a 5-piece, removing the number and just becoming S Club. Another story that I wanted to talk in a bit more detail, there's not a lot more to be said about it really, in Weekly Rushes, is Simon Pegg. We did this last week. I can't remember who it was.
Our girls love Simon Pegg.
Yeah, I can't remember who was it last week who came out as saying that they stopped drinking. Fucking hell, we were talking about it.
Oh, it was oh God, sorry. It was
terrible, I can't remember. And we were talking about how important it was that someone so young, Tom Holland, that's right. He'd stopped drinking for Simon Pegg in Desert Island Discs has been talking about his alcohol addiction, how it impacted him while shooting Mission Impossible 3, how he would empty the entire contents of a minibar in Beverly Hills before then heading out onto set. And I think again it's just important. It's funny because I always feel that you can I mean, it takes one to know one, I guess. I feel like I can see in someone's eyes for a while when they're haunted and struggling, and there's something going on. And so I just think it's really important, and I'm really pleased that someone like Simon Pegg, who has such a sort of
young following
and such a broad kind of male humour kind of following. You'd think of him as very much embedded, as he was, in that sort of male, almost men behaving badly type era, which he was. It was my era, when he did Space and all that kind of stuff. And so for someone like him to come out and talk about this quite openly,
important.
And say, I'm in recovery.
So brilliant.
Is
brilliant. It really helps people that are struggling. Yeah. It's just, I always admire people and applaud people that do that, honestly.
Yeah, and he talks about having had to use alcohol to numb his feelings ever since he was an A-level student.
With low mood, you see. Yeah.
And one of the most important things to say just on this note, which I thought was quite interesting, because you go even as a recovering alcoholic, you go reading through people's stories and you think, well, I wonder what happened to them. I wonder what the condition was. I wonder what happened in their past. Right? I was at an AA meeting a couple of weeks ago where the woman, the man who was chairing, was talking again, and you hear this often. People talk about the fact that nothing overtly obvious happened, and there's an aspect of guilt creeps in, that they're so off the kind of scale with their addiction, but they can't assign it to a moment of, say, trauma or neglect or whatever it is. And that causes great strife and stress, because then you fall into this category of, am I a perfect enough archetypal addict? Am I right to be here?
Trauma,
should I be? Maybe I'm just an absolute arse.
I've had people say that, so I feel really bad because nothing terrible happened to me as a kid.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's not it. You've been medicating some other, some other thing that's been going on for you. You don't have to have had trauma to have been, to have depression or have anxiety.
He doesn't put any more meat on the bones other than saying low mood whilst taking A-levels. And part of me was thinking, that's fine. Even if that was it, low mood at a certain, discovering you struggle with low mood at a certain point in your life is enough.
In fact, we must chat about GCSE and GCSE stress and A-level stress, because they all kick off properly today. So maybe we'll do that tomorrow.
Yeah. Funny that, isn't it? Mental Health Awareness Week. We're now going to put all of our young adults
through the most ridiculous mental health.
Simple ways to spot a liar. I saw this. This is a psychologist. This is in BBC Science Focus. A psychology professor has been interviewed and chatted with and talked to about whether it's easy to spot a liar. Can you spot a liar in your life, guys? Are you a good liar spotter?
I mean, the thing is, what's interesting in this article is that they debunk the idea that this looking away and looking up and looking round shows a liar. And I do agree with that, because I think sometimes when people feel like they're on the spot and they're not, and they don't, and they're not looking in the eyes kind of person, they can look away, and it doesn't necessarily mean they're lying. It means they can feel awkward with the situation of being asked. And we can all think back to school days when a teacher would say, right, who's done it? And everyone would be, every single person in that room would look guilty, because fear does play a part. I think my thing is when people really, really over-explain.
Right. The lady doth too much.
Yeah, I think that, but not always, because I think sometimes people can feel they're not going to be believed, so they feel they have to give more detail. Because sometimes...
Sorry, Leslie F. just says, I think mothers can spot liars.
Better, yeah. He can't lie in front of me.
I can't.
He can't. But as I said to the girls, that's actually a really good quality.
Yeah, I can't.
They go, Dad can't lie at all. See, but that's good. You want to be married to somebody that can't lie. You don't want to be married to somebody who's a great liar.
No, exactly.
But I would say no marriage can survive without lying. You have to.
Right.
I mean, we probably lie without knowing 10, 20 times a day to each other in little ways. How are you feeling? Yeah, great.
Oh, I see.
What did you think of the dinner? Yeah, it was lovely.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought I ruined it when I didn't put enough salt in. No, there was plenty of salt. It's that difference of those little lies. And a lot of people say there is no difference. There is no white lie. But I do believe in white lies, because I believe that a certain amount of lying is about smoothing things through.
Well, that's what this goes on to say about children. I mean, I think, like, if a child receives a present from someone and they hate it,
and we tell
you're
them
going to say to that child
to
say they like it, because it's polite. It's
How
nice.
confusing for a child, but that's a lie. Yeah, but that lady's got a great big spot on the end of her nose. Well, we don't say that. Yeah, but she has. No, but we don't say it, because then it's... So we learn from oh my God, I mean, the way I was brought up, because we had a really big family, everything was about just say that everything is nice, just so we were constantly just, being very, very polite and saying everything was delicious, and you see a smile on somebody's face, and that's like, it feels like a good thing to have done because you made somebody feel better.
Are you a good liar? Do you think you can lie? Do you think because I can't lie, but you say we lie a lot in our lives, but presumably you're seeing every time I'm saying a white lie.
Yeah, I always know when you're lying.
But I don't know. I don't know when you're lying.
What about the times?
That's frightening.
What about the times when you tell a good lie when you're maybe good at it because you might be doing it for my sake?
Right.
So I think, unless there's something major going on in your life, I think you shouldn't overthink it with your partner.
Right.
Because I do think, and I know lots of people will disagree with me on this, because I've said this before on Loose Women, and people are like, oh God. But for me, I will
say it as it is.
If I know somebody's feeling really shit, say, about themselves and the way they look, right, when they come in, I say, do you know what? You're looking really well today. You're looking really... Is that a lie? Or is that just the manners of life, of humanity, where you say things because you know it's just going to help that person a bit that day to feel a bit better?
No, I'm racking my brain now to know what you're lying to me about.
Oh, God. Yeah. No, because the word is... I think we do need
the word lie is quite
lie.
strong.
I think it's fibs.
Fibs.
I like
placating is not malicious. Placating, that's a good minky move. But this guy also, they ask this psychology expert,
exactly.
How reliable is a lie detector? And I've always thought this
is lie detectors.
Can I just say, this is totally equivalent to a blood pressure unit. As soon as you put something on your arm and your fingers and you know you're going to be asked questions, you start to fucking shit yourself.
There is a reason they're not allowed to use them in a court of law. Yeah. It's because, and my God, when you think of some of those situations on television with those lie detectors, when people's lives have been torn to pieces, I don't think it's a good idea. I mean, we've always wanted to do it for a bit of fun, haven't we? But one of our favourite scenes in funny movies is the one in, what is it, when he has the lie detector? Meet the Parents. Oh my God! And the dad takes him downstairs and wires him up to a lie detector.
Should we ever lie to our kids? I'm just asking whilst we move on, because I think there is that aspect of white lies, the right. I mean, another good example of that is the government. Let's face it, we're all supposed to look towards the authorities for guidance.
Cheating sons of bitches, every one of them.
Well, not just them specifically,
not every one of them.
But culturally, societally, there's an important. There's the reason some things aren't considered stuff to go into the public realm is because they don't want to cause widespread panic. So that's lying, isn't it? That's being judicious with the truth. If you sort of say, well, we better not tell that everyone that the reason we're doing the alert on everyone's phone is because aliens are about to land, we'd all suddenly start running around like nutters. Let's have a look. What do you think? 34%. I mean, are we lying about certain festive seasons? Is that a lie? Don't want to say anything more than that.
Our children grow up at some point and know that we won't.
What about, when certain parts of your mouth fall out and they go somewhere? What else
did they say about the visual clues, though?
Well, he said it's a misnomer. He didn't talk... He said it's a misnomer that this idea of staring off is something. But he said what we do look for in body language, he said, is based upon us really getting to know the person in ordinary scenarios first. Because it can be any type of adjustment to normal behaviour that could, so for example, I think he was saying, I've pulled the article down, he said it's something along the lines of that, when interrogating people, they'll often interview and talk to people about non-contentious stuff, everyday stuff in their lives, benign stuff, to see how they would deal with something about that, and if normally they do that. And then as soon as they go to a sort of contentious topic, if suddenly their hands start moving around in a way that wasn't characteristic before, it's like, what do you normally do in a conversation, and how do you then break those rules when you're asked something tricky? Do you know what I mean? It's like, I blush, so if you ask me something, it's like, oh fucking hell, well, clearly something's up there. I've got to go because I need a wee. I mean, I think what he says is it's based upon what you know of the person.
Yeah. Faith says lip reading helps find liars as you see their face change. Well, as we were talking about this last week, weren't we, after we did the deaf awareness Loose Women, and Rose was saying that it's very difficult for two deaf people to lie to each other because you're looking straight at each other and looking into each other's face. So if there's any sort of shifting, then you would know that's a lie. But Rose, have you listened to this guy? Because apparently that is not the be-all and end-all of it. I think one of the most awful things is when you are accused of lying and you haven't lied, and then you get, has this happened to you? And then you're like, you get into this like panic of wanting to convince the person, and then the more that you do that, the more you look like you're lying. So I think we have to safely say, yes, I do. I've got really bad stiff neck. I think the thing is, we can never absolutely know. I think that's the thing. And I think somebody goes, oh, I can always spot a liar. I think you could be in trouble with that, because you might not. I mean, I know this person and they've had so many incredible things happen in their life that it is unbelievable. But she's not a fantasist, and all the things that she talks about have actually happened, but they sound like a lie because they're so unbelievable.
Something about Mary.
So
Who's that?
And you know, actors should never be called in a court case, because everybody automatically thinks that they're lying. Like being in a relationship with someone, if you're an actor, they will say, well, yeah, but how do I know you're not lying? Because you can act.
Case in point. Should social media regulate? Should social media face-altering filters, that's not easy to say, be regulated? Big question there. Should they be regulated? I think the idea here being is, they're a bit of fun, doesn't really matter. They also have a huge impact on body dysmorphia, mental health. Again, Mental Health Awareness Week. I think it's an important topic. The extent to which you can manage the way you look into unrealistic sort of proportions. But yeah, this is a piece in the BBC talking about whether social media face-altering filters should be regulated, because more and more apps are being able to apply this filtering to moving image footage and stuff like that. And I think, really, what do you think? Do you think it should be banned? Do you think it should be banned for the non-famous, non-influencer types who just want to make themselves look different for their friends? Or should it be regulated by those such as yourself who have the ability to talk to a large audience and potentially, lead them up the garden path with their looks? Discuss.
Well, the thing is, we've always had filters in a way, because the way that photographs and magazines and everything is touched up. I mean, like, I have been very cross in the past with certain things when I think, God, that doesn't even bloody look like me. You've just wiped everything out. So it's always been there. And so people have always been influenced by that. I was fucked up all through my life, way before Instagram and Twitter, by magazines and by posters. Because, for instance, cellulite ads, things like that. They would, you were later to discover that they were using 14-year-old legs that were just totally perfect. So it's always been there.
Jordan.
So the really important
100%.
thing. Oh, hi, darling. I was thinking about you this morning.
Saying 100% should be.
Yeah, 100%. And it's damaged. It damaged me. It really damaged me over the years, because like super smooth, flawless skin, all of this. I've got it, and I realise I'm actually very lucky, because actually I have very good skin. And yet somehow I felt insecure about absolutely everything. So the most important thing is the conversations. Nobody had conversations in the 70s. When I was growing up, about how we were being influenced. We had no idea. It was all going in by osmosis. Our girls are very aware that there is so much filter, that there's so many. They'll look at something and they'll go, oh, I wonder what they look like. I would never have thought, I'd think in those terms.
No.
So I think the conversations are really good around it. I think that it's fantastic now that there are advertising rules and regulations on this. So you're not allowed, though I'm sure some people still do. You couldn't use a product and then put a filter on it and say, this is my face cream and I put all of that. So you can't do all of that. I think that because these face tuning things have become so ridiculous, that like nobody looks like anybody anymore. Everybody's starting to look like AIs. It's almost because it's got so bad that it's kind of like debunked it, because you just go, that nobody can look like that. But I do think it's called. I think it's fueling dysmorphia. Yeah. I think it's fueling people's social anxiety, because I think people set themselves up online and looking one way, and then they're terrified of going out and actually being seen what they look like. And I've had that where we think we know somebody and then they turn up and we literally don't recognise them, dude. We've had that because they look so different. And I think that can't be good for your mental health if you're changing yourself that much.
But it's almost, I mean, in some instances, it's as extreme as almost having an avatar, a complete avatar, sort of completely different sort of person. I mean, I personally think, Sadie C makes a really good point. I don't know how it could be regulated, and really, don't we all edit our photos in some way? Showing the ones that look good over the real, that's very true, because you know, the most fundamental form of editing of any form of image or the choice of images is simply by not showing other images. So if you've got 36 photographs of you out at the weekend, you know, bashing about like a nutter, you're going to go through those 36 and go, less likely you because you're not so precious, but you're going to go through the 36 photos and you go, that's the one I want to use. But by simply choosing that one, you've kind of, not photo-tuned yourself, but you've said, all those other authentic visions of myself, I don't want the world to see. I want to see that one because that sort of tallies with my dysmorphic idea of how I hope I look, or how I, you know, more close approximation.
What makes me sad? When my friends like have taken photos of some of them, they send me a photo and it's been filtered. I don't like it. And like you ask any of my friends,
Filtered in what way?
like they've put a they've tuned it afterwards.
When
we all looked lovely, but you ask any of my friends, I swear this is the truth. When they take a photo, I never say, "Oh, can I have a look at that?" Never. I've just put this absolute block in me. Yesterday, Kiki took the worst photo of somebody. I'll put it on my Instagram later. It's the worst photo you've ever seen of me. Right? I'm lying back on her head. And I look like I'm melting onto her head. Mark saw it and screamed, and he said, "That's quite simply horrific, that photo." Because it was funny. Because I know that's just one moment of me. We laughed about it.
I was being shown it in the context of it being.
But you know what Kiki did? She made it a screensaver. And you know what? I didn't say a thing about it because I want them to know that that's okay. Because Friday night, I looked fantastic. I spent ages on my makeup. I did my hair and I loved looking and feeling good. Still, if you caught me in a certain light, if I went to the loo, I looked fucking awful. But I look all these different things. And those are the conversations like I say to my girls all the time. When they go to look at a photo, I say, look for the feeling. Don't look for what you look like. Don't, like, if you take a photo and you immediately span it out to see, oh my God, well, what, oh no. And then a lovely photo where everyone's going like that, suddenly that photo's not allowed anymore. And friends do that as well.
Yeah,
we have to get rid of that photo. And I'm like,
but to be brutally honest.
Everyone's having a good time.
Yeah, but to be brutally honest with you, I think you're very good at throwing yourself under the bus visually and in photographs and in you know, like the photo you're probably going to post as you've just mentioned.
Not seen anything.
But you do live a life where you have a number of people who are dedicated to amplifying you and making you look absolutely beautiful. You could argue that all of that endeavour of makeup and lighting and everything else is a very sophisticated form of app
That's
tuning.
what I said. It's always been there in show
no.
business.
But also, you are fundamentally pretty. So, for example, when we do a photo and you say, "Oh, for God's sake, Mark, just smile." I don't have your fabulous set of gnashers for the camera. Okay, they might be falling out, but they look great. And so, you know, when you smile, it's different for you. It's a different prospect. For me, it's a horrendous prospect. And for, you know, and so likewise for other people, if you in a weird way, I think your dysmorphia, which of course you have, can be moderated somewhat by the fact that you clearly are attractive enough to have been what you've been.
Modo? I mean, hang on a minute. You are proving my point. You are actually proving my point.
But that's not what I want to talk about. What I want to talk about is the idea that I think for a lot of normal people in normal walks of life, social media apps, and I think it's really important that you don't ignore this. All these apps, in fact, find face tuning. Perhaps it's an opportunity for them to have a taste of what it's like to be someone like you and people above you, you know, made to look sort of smooth and beautiful and beautiful colours and all that kind of. Do you know what I mean? I sometimes think we lose sight of the fact that there is something quite genuinely aspirational about this that isn't just, yes, it creates psychological problems, but you've got to understand why it's happening, because actually we live in a culture.
I do understand why it's happening, but I think it's exacerbating what is happening. It's exacerbating the problem. Because everybody wants to look fucking perfect all the time. And, you know, I make a real point of only occasionally putting really nice photos up of myself, and then I will always put one of what the other side, because I can look nice.
No, but you're very.
We can all
it's
brush
very
up well
good.
enough.
But you doing that, going back to Mental Health Awareness Week, without like wishing to say, you doing that is really important for people, because again, what you're showing is that on this side of the kind of equation, although I might be off the telly and I might do this and that, you know, actually behind the scenes, this is the authenticity, and that makes people feel a little bit better about themselves. I think also someone has drawn a distinction. There is a difference between app tuning or face tuning apps and filters. And if I think back to the, you know, way back when I was teaching in a college where they had photography students, you know, they were all kind of not necessarily photoshopping, but even in the way that you develop a photograph, you can develop it so that it overexposes, that it blemishes, you know, burns out the skin, you know. This process, I mean, I remember years and years ago doing a show where we did a grade on it. This is like 25 years ago. And we did a grade that tracked the colour of the presenter's skin, so they had a suntan. Yeah. We created a suntan because they weren't happy with how pale they looked. Now, that required no digital kind of technology other than we were just playing with colours. You know, this stuff has been around for a long, long time.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think we're done. We were going to talk about female incontinence, but we haven't got time.
And I've got to go and
sort your shoulder out. So guys, look, have a lovely Monday. As we say, I'm not entirely sure how it's going to come across, our mental health sort of stuff, but
we are going to be reviewing programs as they go along, because these programs are weeks.
Yeah,
so,
and within that we'll talk about it. I'm sure there'll be a few posts. I mean, I think it'll be quite helpful actually for Nadia to share with you the image that she's talking about.
It's going to make everyone feel better.
It's quite something. But guys, look, have a lovely day. It was quite shocking. Have a lovely day. If you haven't subscribed, subscribe. If you haven't gone to the Coffee Moaning Instagram account, do, because there's a very funny live there with Nads. Bye.